Hey, everybody. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Great River Harley Davidson in Onalaska, Wisconsin. Today, we're going to talk about group riding. The reason we're going to talk about group riding is recently came back from a trip in Tennessee. And motorcycling is primarily a solo activity. For many, riding as a group, whether with friends on a Sunday morning ride or with an organized motorcycle rally, it's fun part of motorcycling experience. There's something special about group riding. So we're going to talk about some tips to help ensure a fun and safe ride. Here's a little bit of a video of our trip down to Tennessee where we had a group, 5 riders, 8 people total. It was a good, a small group ride. Worked out rather well. So what we want to talk about is being prepared, arrive on time with a full tank of gas ready to go so that you're not showing up and then, I got to gas up and then you're delaying the group, right? So be prepared, arrive on time. Hold a riders meeting. Discuss things like the route, rest and fuel stops, hand signals. Assign a lead rider, a sweep or tail rider. Both should be experienced riders who are well-versed in group riding procedures. The lead rider should be aware of each rider's skill level before the ride and monitor riders during the ride. You want to ride at the pace of the least experienced rider. So we keep safety in mind. The pickled eggs that you see in the picture here are optional during this meeting. Keep the group size to a manageable size, ideally 5 to 7 riders. If necessary, you should break the group up into smaller subgroups, separated by a few seconds, with each having a lead and sweep rider. You basically don't want to get the group so big it's unmanageable, and then you have to deal with traffic laws and keeping the group together, so it's better to have smaller groups. Ride prepared. At least one rider in each group should have a first aid kit, a full tool kit, and all riders should carry cell phones so that the group is prepared for any problem that they might encounter. Ride in formation. The staggered riding formation allows for proper space cushion between motorcycles so that each rider has enough time and space to maneuver and react to hazards. The leader rides to the left third of the lane, while the next rider stays 1 second behind in the right third of the lane. The rest of the group follows in the same pattern. A single file formation with a minimum of 2-second following distance is preferred on curvy roads and under conditions of poor visibility, poor road surfaces, entering or leaving highways, or other situations where increased space cushion or maneuvering room is desired or needed. Avoid side-by-side formations as they reduce the space cushion. If you suddenly need to swerve to avoid a hazard, you would not have room to do so. You don't want handlebars to get entangled with each other. Here on the tail of the Dragon on this trip that we were just out at, on a curvy road like this, on the tail, certainly you don't want to be riding side by side. The single formation would be great on this road because you have then use of the entire lane with plenty of following distance and safety margin available to you. Periodically check riders following using your rearview mirrors. If you see a rider falling behind, slow down so they can catch up. If all the riders in the group use this procedure, the group should be able to maintain a fairly steady speed without pressure to ride too fast to catch up. Here's an example of some video that we took when we were out riding. Again, we're in a staggered formation for the most part. When we started getting into more curvy roads, you could tell we separated a little bit more with space cushion, checking behind us to ensure riders were always there, and then certainly going to that single person formation and taking the entire lane and going through those different corners that we just needed more space for. When you get the 25 mile an hour speed warning sign coming up, or 15, or you have switchbacks, it's great to have one good separation between you and the other riders, not too far, right? But a decent separation. And then certainly being able to use your whole lane and then having that safety margin ahead is good. If you're separated from your group, don't panic. Your group should have a pre-planned procedure in place to regroup. Don't break the law or ride behind or beyond your skills to catch up, right? We pull over to the side, wait for the rest of the group to catch up, regroup with your plan, and then take off again. For mechanical or medical problems, use your cell phone to call for assistance as the situation warrants. If a rider leaves, let's say, it's pre-planned, hey, when we get up past this exit or this road, I'm taking off because I'm going home or I'm going to this location. If a rider leaves during the ride, the rest of the group should reform in a staggered formation by crisscrossing into the next vacant position. Although it may seem efficient, right, for the column to directly form up behind the missing rider and just move up, we don't recommend it because passing another rider within a lane can be risky. Some hand signals. There's, if you Google online, right, you can say motorcycle rider hand signals and you'll get things from MSF and from different organizations. There's at least 14 different ones. I'll cover a couple of the high point ones right here. So the single file, with your left hand. And the reason we use left hand mostly is because your right hand is on your throttle, right? If you take it off to give some sort of signal, you're going to be decelling at that point unless you have your cruise control set. But single file, so your left hand up in the air, so number one is the signal you're given there for single file. Double file, arm with index and middle finger extended straight up, sort of like the peace signal, right? Two across there. Fuel, arm out to the side, pointing at the tank. Typically with group rides, you can either pre-plan gas stop. So, we're going 100 miles and we're going to stop. We're going to stop every 125 miles. You can already have the gas stations picked if you need to. If it's a large group and it's pre-planned, a lot of times you'll have these things already in there. But if you're sort of fly by wire, right? You don't have a pre-planned spot. You got to know the range of the lowest ranged motorcycle, right? The smallest tank, I have to stop every 150 miles for sure, right? Usually my butt can't handle more than an hour and a half on the saddle anyway. So, stopping for fuel every once in a while, but this is the signal. Arm out to the side, pointing to the tank with your finger extended if you need to clue people in. This one people use quite often in groups, and it's to point out hazards on the roadway. If the hazard's more on the left side or if you're riding on the right lane, so the hazard, if it's in the lane, might be more to the left, you're going to use your left hand out, just pointing to whatever hazard that is. On the right side, you point with your foot, right? So you can just stick out your foot. And again, the reason we're not using our right hand, unless obviously we have our cruise control set, if you have a cruise control, is your hands on the throttle. So you can point to the right with your right foot, you can point to the left with your left arm and hand. Speed up. This is just, your hands out to the side and you palm facing up and you just sort of give that wave up and speed up signal. Comfort stop, forearm extended, fist clenched with short up and down motion. I have to take a comfort stop. Whether you use this or you use the one where it's, food or refreshment break, it's sort of the thumb pointing to your mouth type of a thing that way. Either way, you're going to stop. So I guess if you don't want to indicate comfort, but you want to indicate, let's stop, and then you use it for the comfort stop, hey, whatever works, right? So this and other signals, MSF is one of the resources where they have a whole web page on group riding. Harley Davidson has a whole page on group riding, different dealerships. Many organizations have this as well. The important thing is to have a plan. And certainly, if at the end of your day, you're done riding, you decide to have an adult beverage, drink responsibly, do not drink and ride. Have that beverage at the end of the day, hopefully in walking distance for your hotel, like we did on our trip here. So we want you to gear up for every ride, and certainly we want you to ride safe. Thanks for watching. again, we want to thank our sponsors at Great River Harley Davidson in Onalaska, Wisconsin. Take care, everybody.